We are back to In the Greater World. Today, we are going to do chapter 15, a Christian Plea. This chapter is most of it, or basically all of it, is a presentation lecture talk by instructor Eusebio. So it's not much for us to stop in the middle because it's a long lecture, but we're going to try to break it twice, and if we finish early, we start the next chapter. Otherwise, we stop here. But there's really not much to say in the middle of it. I asked Philip to read today because I think that is all ready for a long haul of reading. So again, chapter 15, In the Greater World, a Christian Plea. Go ahead, Philip.
My opportunity to study with Colorado was coming to an end when, on the eve of my promised visit to the caverns of suffering, the dear assistant invited me to hear a presentation by instructor Eusebio. Say that again?
Eusebio.
Okay. That night, he would be addressing hundreds of Catholics and Protestants who were still at work in the physical realm. They will consist of less dogmatic, more liberal brothers and sisters who are open to our more direct influence during sleep. Due to their virtue, they have become worthy of directives from the higher planes. I couldn't hide my surprise at what he was telling me, but he added quickly, "It's important to understand that divine providence shows no privileges. Heavenly grace is like the fruit that always results from earthly effort. Wherever there is human cooperation, there too will be divine support. It's not the outward expression of a particular religious belief that interests us fundamentally, but the display of living faith, the soul's positive attitude on its evolutionary journey. Of course, the schools of belief vary, each within its own circle. It's a fact that the more rudimentary the religious understanding, the greater the competitiveness arising from the lower circles of spirituality established. Need the next screen. I can't quite read the first line.
Unfortunately, boundaries of opinion and aggravating, deplorable
hostilities, as if God were nothing but a dictator having a hard time keeping himself in power. Since evangelical spiritism is a prodigious nucleus of sublime understanding, it is reasonable to regard it as a more elevated and richer Christian school, since it possesses such blessings of knowledge and love. It should extend them to all fellow spirits, even if they are rebellious and ungrateful as a consequence of the ignorance they haven't yet left behind. Jesus's compassion could be gauged by the evolutionary state of those who followed him closely, as he faced minds imprisoned in the vain intellectualism characteristic of many important personalities of his time. We see him inflamed with divine energy. In contrast, on his final day in Jerusalem before the impassioned and ignorant people, although they were adhering to the principles of their belief system, we find him silent and humble, asking forgiveness for all who smote him. Impressing his words with a softer inflection, he added kindly, "Let's not forget that, above all, we are devoted to an educational endeavor. To save or rescue certain individuals does not mean to take away their opportunity to develop through struggle, to grow and to edify themselves. Instead, it implies fraternal assistance so that they may awaken and evolve, acquiring the same balance that characterizes those who have helped them. It doesn't please the Supreme Lord to have miserable and unhappy children in his creation. He spreads blessings and talents, riches and eternal amenities all around, expecting only that each of us be determined to manage our own patrimony wisely. As we have seen, all sectors of spiritual work require divine assistance. Before he could explain the matter more fully, we reached the peaceful place where the esteemed emissary was speaking. Again, I can't see the top line.
Glancing around, I could see that there were only a few hundred incarnates
Incarnate at the gathering, assisted by a substantial number of co-workers from our realm. The moonlight shone gently on the trees, which were swaying in the breeze. Majestic in the sublime light, haloing his venerable figure, it looked like Uzbekio's lecture had been going on for quite a while. Enraptured, his audience listened to his words touched with heavenly light. Everyone's faces displayed obvious wonder. Mixed together and kneeling in large numbers on the fresh grass, they felt as if they had suddenly been transported to paradise.
Okay, thanks, Philip.
Mhm.
So we are getting closer to the end of the book, so that's why Andre Luiz says in the beginning, my opportunity to study with Calderaro. Calderaro is the mentor that guides Andre Luiz through this book. We know that each book, Andre Luiz has a spiritual mentor guiding him, an instructor, and he's going to later to visit the caverns of suffering. We're still going to see this before the book ends, but before that, Andre Luiz is invited to hear a presentation by instructor Eusebio. For those that remember, and that was a long time ago, in the beginning of this book, before they went on to the work, Andre Luiz was taken to a lecture by instructor Eusebio. That's the lecture that you find on chapter 2 of this book. And the lecture was given to 1,200 spirits, both incarnates and discarnates. And it was a lecture addressing the needs of dealing with our challenges here on Earth and the work ahead that Andre Luiz was going to deal, which is a lot related to disturbances of the mental disturbances, both on the physical brain or of the spirit in the spiritual world. But what's different in this lecture is that he would be addressing Catholics and Protestants who are still at work in the physical realm. So he was going to address incarnates. And he explains that these are less dogmatic, more liberal brothers and sisters who are open to our more direct influence during sleep. What does he mean by that? What he means is, within the religions, you have followers that are more open-minded to whatever comes from outside the teachings of their religions. So they are more open to spiritual truths that will that they will analyze and reason outside their dogmas and their impositions. So, you know, the idea here is to uh, is to give these brothers and sisters some of spiritual truths that we are going to hear in Eusebio's lecture, to give them an opportunity to work for the progress of themselves and of their brothers and sisters that follow their religions. It's not in any moment he is not trying to do here is to remove them from their beliefs and from their religions. The you know, it's not, the idea is not to bring them to spiritism or anything like that. It's really to prepare them to work within their own religions with more open minds and open hearts, to be receptive and acceptance to any external help that can come from outside their own religions, because the truth is universal, is everywhere, and we need to be open. And that we know that in Spiritism, you know, we are used to discuss beliefs and other beliefs and other truths that come from outside Spiritism, because we know that the truth is everywhere. So it's important to understand, as he says, here divine protection shows no privilege. Outward expression of a particular religion belief doesn't interest us, but display of living faith, meaning really what makes us progress is our own evolutionary journey, our own progress, wherever we find ourselves in terms of religious followings, or even outside any religious beliefs. Now, what he says here that is very important and that we see is that the more rudimentary the religious understanding, the greater combativeness arising from the lower circles of spirituality. What does he mean here? He means that if you have a very limited understanding of the universal truths, you tend to be more fanatic with the dogmas and the beliefs within your own religion, and you don't accept what comes from outside. You don't even analyze. So it's really, and we see this throughout history, the fanaticism that religious people bring to their religions. And we see that, unfortunately, nowadays still prevailing from several different religions, not specifically for one or another, but whenever you don't open yourself for reason and for understanding, you risk being become a fanatic. And when you are a fanatic, of course, we know in Spiritism, you are going to associate yourself with less evolved spirits that want these ideas to disseminate, that want this to cause harm to others. So what he's trying to tell us here is that everywhere you'll find open minds that are open to receive influences. So he's taking this opportunity to address to some Catholics and Protestants. And again, we have to remember that this is Brazil in the middle of the 20th century, probably around in 1940s or something. So Brazil at that time was 90% Catholic and probably 8% or 5% Protestant. Nowadays, it's still a vast majority of the country is Catholic. It's probably like 70% of those that declare themselves Catholics, but very few. The ones that really follow the religion is probably 10 to 20% of that. You have a large number of Protestants in Brazil. The evangelicals are a growing number. You have probably around 20, 25%. And they are more devoted and followers of their religion. And then you have others. You barely have Muslims in Brazil. You have few Jewish, and you have us Spiritists, which is, according to the latest number, is like 4 or 5% of Brazilians. But Brazilians also are very open. So you have like 20% of Brazilians that believe in what Spiritism teaches us, but they don't declare themselves Spiritists. They believe in reincarnation, they believe in the communication from the spirits, they believe that all these things, but they do not declare themselves Spiritists. Those who declare themselves Spiritists are 4 to 5 million Brazilians nowadays, which is, a decent number. Anyway, so at that time, he was addressing himself to Catholics and a few Protestants, because that were the crowd there. If we was today, it would be a more diverse group of believers, so he continues here talking about, Calderaro explaining to Andre Luiz that what's important is not your religious affiliation, but how much you are working to progress morally and intellectually, and that's independent of your religion. So they arrive there, and there is only a few hundred incarnates at the gathering, and a substantial number of co-workers. So all these incarnates, and that they are it's during their sleep, and we understand and we learn from Spiritism that when we are sleeping during the night, we go to the spiritual world. Our perispirit moves away from the physical body, does not disconnect, because if it disconnects, we die. But it's loosely connected to our physical body, and have experiences in the spiritual world. How much do we remember from these experiences varies. We never remember 100%. There are people that say they remember 100%, but it's not true. There are people that say they don't remember anything, which is sometimes happen, but most of us bring some recollection of our experiences in the spiritual world. And as we mentioned before, our brain connects the dots. So when you are remembering, you say you remember 100%. What really you are remembering is most of it, and your brain connecting the dots and putting ideas there that are not really your experiences in the spiritual world. And why don't we remember everything? For several different reasons, but mainly we are not prepared to deal with everything that we experience in the spiritual world most of the time. So it's better for us to remember just parts of it. Okay. So any questions, comments here? It's important if you have anything to say here, because now we are going to the lecture, and the lecture goes to the end of the chapter. So I'm not sure if there is any. I'm going to break in the middle just to give a break to Philip, because it's a lot of pages, but there is not much for us to break in the middle of it. It's a beautiful lecture, which has I don't have much to add. So anyone has any questions, comments before we enter into the lecture? Yes.
I just have a comment. It seems to me that, I don't know, it could be my bias against, I grant that it may be my bias against institutional religion, but I find institutional religion, I guess, dogmatic by nature.
Yeah.
You don't go there to discuss and to exchange and to and it's very guilt thought-provoking guilt reading, like, I don't know, it could be my bias. It could be my bias. So when you're talking about, when you're talking about further, for those people that are not really so attached to those dogmatic and they're looking for higher spiritual truth, I don't know. All religions to me are kind of dogmatic.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm telling you also, I do, the caveat is that, or my limitation is that I'm also, I'm biased against church. Okay. So that's where probably my comment is coming from,
No,
So,
but you are right in the sense that the way that religions throughout the
operate.
centuries operate is to try to how you dominate and you impose control over people by carrying them into
Exactly.
following the dogmas and the teachings. And
Yes.
that's what happened for many centuries. And that's how science moved away from religion in the 19th century, rejecting everything because it's called the age of reason, because it brought reason and rejected everything that was not scientific related. And then that's when Spiritism comes in the middle of the 19th century, trying to unite spirituality and reason. But religions are very slow in changing, but they are changing. For those that saw the Pope, the new documentary about the Pope, when he accepts and actually asks for marriage between gay people to be officialized, to be made, to be made official. This is the progress of the church. Of course, a lot of the progress comes with rejection, comes with a lot of backlash. But this is the church moving forward. This is the church going with times, but not all religions are that fast in moving. Some of religions are still very
backwards.
dogmatic.
That's the word. Backwards.
Yes.
I don't know what I don't want to use that word,
but more and more people are operating outside the religions, declaring themselves spiritual but not associated to any religions, and the religions will have to adapt it. We evolve. There's no way. Humanity progress. So the religions either adapt or will lose all of their followers. They'll lose even more than they are losing today. So the idea here, but religions are still very important because it gives people something to where to go to in times of desperation. So we need to have somewhere to go when we are desperate, and if we don't, we end up making mistakes and harming ourselves. The number of suicides are increasing, the number of mental diseases are increasing, and religion still can provide a relief for these people, for many of those. So we are not here saying that organized religions are not important. They are very important, but our role in Spiritism is to evolve with our spirituality and with understanding where do they come from, and trying to to bring the truth as much as possible to those who want to hear it. Of course, we're not going to try to impose beliefs in anyone. I mentioned this week in one of our studies, and Luiz was there, that Chico Xavier said a phrase that I like very much, that he said that if Spiritism said that without Spiritism there is no salvation, I wouldn't be a Spiritist. Because Spiritism says without charity there is no salvation, that's why I am a Spiritist. And that's very important, right? The salvation is not within Spiritism. The salvation is within ourselves. It's how we act on our personal journey of evolution, spiritually and intellectually, that we are going to save ourselves and save, what's this salvation? It's saving ourselves, from our inferior tendencies, from our tendencies to deviate from the right path. This is the salvation that we're talking about. But all religions, normally you'll find in them, without this religion, there is no salvation. So if you are not a religious in that religion, you are condemned to hell or to whatever they consider. So, it's a challenge, but it's something that we have to progress slowly. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm just very glad that you put this book in place and time to justify the invitation of Catholics and Protestants, because at the first reading it seems to be kind of exclusivist, but when you place in the context of time and place, it's actually a very inclusivist. It's including basically everyone in that location, that part. Remember that the very minimum amount of non-Christians that came to Brazil, Jewish and Muslims, they came during and after the war. So this book is prior to that yet. So inviting the so-called Catholics and Protestants was actually an inclusion. It's including basically everyone, which at the first reading, it gives an idea, especially for us, New Yorkers living in this melting pot of so many religions, so many cultures. It's very exclusivist when you first read. But don't think of New York, think of Brazil pre-war. It's completely different time and place they have to consider. And the most important thing is, I don't have the reading right now, it says, the invitation was for those who during sleeping, when the body is at rest, are liberated and seeking spiritual enlightenment. It's not even being Catholics or not even being Protestants. It's for those who have that link, that little bit that allows them to liberate themselves from preconceived ideas and are seeking spiritual growth. And that's, to me, the most important thing.
Yeah, very important point, because nobody's forced to go to that. They don't drag any spirit there. They bring spirits that are willing to learn. Yes, very good point, Elmo. Because we can, we may think here, oh, they drag spirits there to force them to listen. Nobody's forced to go there. You go during your sleep. You go where your vibrational energies take you, like
that's right.
in everything else, right? So, if you are thinking of of the soccer match on the weekend before going to sleep, and you're sleeping with that idea, you're not going to go to a lecture of one of these lectures. You are going to stay around those that have the same thoughts as you have, and experience the ones that are vibrating at the same level as you. So yeah, very good point. Okay, anyone else? Okay, Philip, I'll give you a break in the middle so we can, but it really, it's a long lecture that there is not much to add, as I said. So, if you want in the middle, if you want to say something, just raise your hands and I'll stop Philip, okay?
Enveloped in sapphire reflections, the instructor spoke with an irresistible power of attraction. If the heritage of religious faith represents the undeniable factor of mental balance in the world, what are you doing with this treasure, forgetting to use it in an age when instability and uncertainty threaten all the institutions of order and labor? of understanding and edification. Doesn't the storm of renewal that is redefining principles and nations amaze you, awakening your conscience? Do you believe that an era of peace on the outside is possible without people preparing themselves on the inside to observe and practice the divine laws? By admitting such foolishness, the machine, that offspring of your intelligence, has annulled any possibility of you, for you, to make a greater inclusion into the realm of the eternal spirit. Being a Christian in days gone by meant choosing the noblest of all experiences, and it entailed the duty of exemplifying the standard of conduct consecrated by the divine master. It consisted in continuous fight against evil with the weapons of the good, the active manifestation of love against hatred, the certainty of the victory of the light
over the darkness, the undeniable triumph of constructive peace over
destructive dissension. When faced with the Moloch of the imperialism and corruption of the Roman Empire, the adherents of the gospel did not indulge in bitter arguments. They did not get entangled in the web of detrimental self-centeredness, nor did they squander their precious abilities in order to erect dogmatic boundaries. They loved each other in the name of the Lord and offered their lives as a token of gratitude to the one who did not hesitate to go to the cross out of love for all of us. They built their most sublime sanctuaries in communion with the sanctifying principles that identified them with the Savior of the world. They knew how to forfeit temporary advantages in order to gain the imperishable treasures of heaven. They sanctified themselves for each other in a living display of fraternal devotion. They shared the suffering and multiplied the joy amongst themselves. They died in an anguished testimony of faith in order to reach the life eternal. They fought the imbalances of their time and of their contemporaries, not with cursing blows, but with the edge of the sword, but with the practice of self-denial, submitting themselves to harsh discipline and displaying in their words, thoughts, and actions the sublime message of the Master who had renewed their hearts. However, as heirs to those nameless heroes who lived in affliction of minds built up in the promises of Christ, what have you done with transforming hope, with unwavering trust? What have you done with the living faith that your forebears acquired at the price of blood and tears? What has happened to the spirit of fraternity that characterized the followers of the new doctrine? Enriched by the grace of heaven, you have gradually forgotten the doors to divine revelation and have exchanged them for human amenities.
Okay, so let's stop here, Philip, so you can catch breath. So what Eusebio is telling us here in the beginning is he's comparing what we do with religion today with what Jesus brought to us in the beginning. There was no religion in the beginning. Christ didn't bring us, Jesus didn't bring us a religion. He brought to us teachings. He brought to us examples on how to live a better life. So what he's basically saying here is that in the early days, Christians or the followers of Jesus did not fight amongst themselves. Actually, they sacrificed themselves when when he says here, when faced with the Moloch of the imperialism and corruption of the Roman Empire. Moloch is an old god which the ancient used to sacrifice children to this god. So he's using the name Moloch here of imperialism and corruption of the Roman Empire, because we know that, and we've been studying this on the book On the Way to the Light, when the Roman Empire was dominating the world, that the idea was for the Roman Empire to spread in, the spirituality and the knowledge through the dominated people, and they ended up losing themselves in abuses of power and abuses of domination, and ended up self-destroying the Roman Empire. We've been studying this On the Way to the Light. So here Eusebio says that the early Christians loved each other in the name of love of the Lord, and offered their lives as a token of gratitude to the one that went to the cross and was the savior, in terms of he didn't die for our sins as the religions tells us, but he died to show us as an example that his kingdom is not of this world, as we just studied on this Thursday when we finished the Spirit's book. So he's asking to these students, these heirs to the heroes who lived in the time of Christ, what are you doing with it? What are you doing with the teachings that the Master left to us? You have forgotten what he brought to us, and you are following a path that takes us nowhere. That's basically what he's saying here. Okay, any comments here?
Could it be more contemporaneous?
Yeah, I know. Yes. Well, it's a talk from probably 80 years ago or 70, 80 years ago, and we haven't changed that much in 70, 80 years, right? We haven't changed technologically a lot, but morally, I'll let everyone decide by themselves. So Philip, you cannot read the top line. So you have erected barriers against each other that are difficult to
cross. Dogmatism poisons you. Schism corrupts you. Narrow interpretations of the divine plan darken your mental horizons. You start hostilities in the name of the kingdom of heaven, even though it stands for universal love and eternal unity. You profane the font of blessings, damning one another in the name of the Prince of Peace, who, in order to help us, did not waver before his own insulting death. What delirium has taken you as you involve yourselves in a mutual competition for the imaginary attainment of divine privileges? In times of old, Christ's disciples competed for opportunities to serve, whereas today you look for every little opportunity to be served. You honor the light of the centuries of the Lord, yet you remain in the darkness of the atrocious selfishness. You proclaim the glory of peace in him, yet you encourage fratricidal war, in which humans and governments mutually slaughter one another. You appeal to the divine master, centralizing the inexhaustible fountain of love in his infinite goodness. Yet you cultivate disharmony in the depths of your being. By what strange convictions do you think you can earn paradise with the power of lip service? Have you forgotten that the word, divine in nature, is always creative? How can you believe in salvation at the price of mere words that you render meaningless by your attitudes? Nonetheless, it is, I think,
imperative to acknowledge the sublime character
of your task in the world. Jesus founded the religion of universal love, which politically minded clergy have divided into many schools guided by unjustifiable sectarianism. Regardless of this lamentable human error, the essence of your principles is the same essence that upheld the courage and worthiness of the selfless workers in the early days of Christianity. Just because a few missionaries of religious truths may have forgotten the divine paternity and let themselves be carried away by extremes of authority in a preference for oppression and tyranny, you yourselves are no less responsible at this time for the sacred concepts entrusted to you by Jesus, concepts intended for human evolution and the sanctification of the earth. At its roots, the gospel has retained the beauty of its first day. No sophism has managed to dim the luster of love one another as I have loved you. In the face of the challenges of heaven, do you actually believe that you are serving God by confining the work of faith within ornate churches? The pomp of outward worship only heightens the foolishness of your dangerous illusions about spiritual life. The divine master's mission would be fruitless if the good tidings were to remain confined to denominational trenches where you have presumptuously taken shelter with the aim of igniting the abominable bonfire of falsely cardinal hostilities. Can't
Okay. So
I
let's
like,
stop here. So take a breath. Where do we start, right? You know, his message, Eusebio's message here is really for everyone, right?
Yes.
You know, when he says that you have erected barriers against each other, dogmatism poisons you, exactly what you were talking, Paco.
yes.
Schism corrupts you. Narrow interpretations of the divine plan darken your mental horizons.
Yeah.
You know, that we are fighting amongst ourselves in our own small houses. We are fighting wars, slaughtering one another in the name of the Lord. You know, all of this is so so against what Jesus taught us. So, you know, it's very strong. It's very strong what he says here. And when he said Jesus founded a religion of universal love, and we humans divided in many schools. It's only
Yes.
one school. It's only one teaching. The universal truth should be only one teaching. But of course, we be studying this in the verse in different books, right? We talked about when we discussed heaven, hell, and purgatory. The Christian church was divided between the Orthodox Church and the Roman Church, Roman Catholic Church, and purgatory was one of the main reasons that they were unable to continue to go together. So, you know, because of creations of our own minds, we separate ourselves from others, and you see, even amongst the Protestants, how many denominations they have nowadays? Thousands. Because anyone that wants create their own church, create their own truths. So what are we doing with the teachings that Jesus brought to us? Love one another as I have loved you. That's all. And we are not able to do that. We're not able even to try to do that. So, it's strong, really. He's being very strong in his words, but it is directed at people that are prepared to listen to it and to reflect on it. What are you doing inside the church? You have to go outside. You have to go live the truth that Jesus brought to us. Outward worship only heightens the foolishness of your dangerous illusions about spiritual life. That's, again, strong, right? Comments, questions?
I think this was directed for us now, not so much at the time when he wrote this. This is actually now. Everything he says here is what we're doing now. I mean, we have technology, we have improved, we have buildings that are going up to the sky, we're going to space, and everything is done. Education, technology is beautiful. Look where we're doing now. We're Zooming each other here and continue to, yes, we've progressed, but gee, why is it that I'm listening to this and it's like we haven't done much of anything? I don't understand. It's shameful.
We haven't learned.
Actually, very, very shameful.
Yeah, I agree.
But we're not, like we always say, we're not perfect. But gee, it's an enlightening bolt. Wake up. Look what we're doing. It's so beautiful. I mean, what a plea.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful plea. He's given a Christian plea here.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Let us look at ourselves, and again, it's for each one of us, right? We normally, when we talk about messages that we receive from spiritual mentors in the mediumistic meetings, right? Mediumship meetings, and we say, well, we read the messages and we think, oh, this message is for this one and that one. No, the messages are for each one of us. We have to take all these messages personally. How are we doing? What are we doing with this, right? This is this message that he's giving us, this plea, is for each one of us. We have to look at ourselves and analyze what are we doing with our beliefs, our thoughts, our reason, right?
A comment. I find this a bit of what I would call the spiritual psychotherapy, like the Course in Miracles, because this exchange makes us mindful of what we believe, rather than accepting it as dogmatic, So it's a bit of a group therapy kind of in terms of spiritual values. I believe so.
Yes.
We're not saying here that Spiritism is the best or that my God is better than yours. That's
the same.
Yeah,
the same God for everyone.
Exactly. I'm not saying that be a spiritist and there'll be salvation. We're not saying that. So it's kind of a group therapy.
That's the idea. One of the ideas is a group therapy. Without a doubt.
A spiritual group therapy is what you call it. Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, let's go through it. Can't you find?
Where are we?
Can't you find?
Next to last.
Okay. Can't you find a different formula with which to express your belief other than by ignoble competition? In vain, you erect castles of opinion filled with words without deeds. Remember, however, that just as death surprises rebellious,
materialists and reveals the reality of life to them. It also opens the court
of true justice to try all those who use religion to disguise the indifference resides in their inner world. Do not believe that faith can be consecrated with very little effort. As is the case with science, religion has its specific role in the world. As the balancing power of thought, its servants are called to work together in the harmony of the human mind. In the manifestation of positive faith resides the power that regulates the passions and the irresistible impulses of animalism, from which we all have emerged in the evolutionary process that presides over our existence. Jesus did not confine his teachings to the narrow confines of temples made of stone. It is true that he revered the monuments that would recall the sanctified places of prayer, dedicated to the higher manifestations of the Spirit, but he did not remain inert in the posture of worship. He lived winning friends for the kingdom of heaven. He did not impose rigid norms of action on his followers. What he asked for was love and understanding, sincere faith and goodwill for spiritually constructive work. When he approaches Magdalene, he does not engage in pointless conversation. He interests her heart in the sublime, renewing task. When he visits Zacharias, he blesses him for his noble and constructive effort. When he addresses the Samaritan woman, he does not engage in worthless arguments. He impresses her through contact with his divine soul, causing her to abandon the old amphora of fantasy in order to search for the eternal fonts. Living with the blind and lepers, the insane and sick of all kinds, he exemplified a social life based on the purest fraternity and the most elevated incentives for sanctification.
Finally, sacrificed on the cross, his last two companions
were avowed thieves, to whom he did not hesitate to direct his fraternal love inflamed word. How can you invoke his name to justify the madness of separation on the basis of faith? How can one lean on a friend of all in order to launch battles of opinion, lighting fires of hatred to the detriment of the common solidarity that he exemplified up to his ultimate sacrifice? Doesn't it vilify his memory to spread dissension in his name? I could see that the speaker's words were making a deep impression. The majority of listeners wept with unrestrained emotion, feeling touched by the judgment of heaven.
Okay, let's break it here again. He continues, talking here. He talks about opinions, right? Different opinions, words without deeds. That we are all going to go back to the spiritual world. Even the materialists will go back to the spiritual world and see the reality of the continuation of life back in the spiritual world. So he talks here, when he talks down here with Magdalene. So let's review what are these passages that he talks here about. So Magdalene was a rich woman. You'll find her story in the first edition of the Spiritist Review, that the magazine that was launched by the International Spiritist Council. There is a very long article about her there that is very beautiful, very interesting. You should, if you haven't had an opportunity to read, you should. She found in Jesus, the Savior, and he never asked her what were you doing before, but he helped her get rid of the obsessors that she had. Apparently she had many, and calls her to follow him in the renewing task, in the sublime quest for spirituality, and she becomes one of the most important followers of Jesus, according to Divaldo, the second most important disseminator of Christianity after Paul the Apostle, and as important as Paul the Apostle. So that's how he reaches out to Magdalene. So the second one we talk here is Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a chief tax collector and very wealthy. And he was the short guy that went up to the tree for the opportunity to see Jesus, because he was passing in the middle of the crowd. And when Jesus reached where he was, he said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must go to your house today. Let us remember that the tax collectors at the time of Judaism, they were the most hated people, because the Romans very smartly would choose people from their own communities, the dominated communities, to be the tax collectors, because the only thing that Romans really care were about collecting taxes. They didn't care about their beliefs. They didn't care about their traditions. Actually, they didn't interfere with traditions and with the beliefs. They only wanted to collect taxes. That was always the reason for fights, and always the reason for the dominance of the Romans. So Zacchaeus, of course, Zacchaeus was hated by all the followers of Judaism at that time, and the followers of Christ, of Jesus. You have to remember they were mostly Jews. So only after Paul is that Christianity spread to the non-Jewish community. So the fact that Jesus goes to him and says, come down from the tree and I'm going to stay at your house today, is giving an example that we cannot discriminate, that we are all brothers and sisters. And Zacchaeus came down, and the people that saw this, they said, Jesus has gone to be the guest of a sinner, because according to the Jewish, he was a sinner. But Jesus, he told Jesus, Lord, I will give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I'll pay back 4 times the amount. So what he's saying here is he's just doing his job. He's not stealing anything. He was just following what he was supposed to do. Again, doesn't mean that according to everyone else he was right, but it was no reason for him to be hated and persecuted. So Jesus tells him, today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. So Jesus is saying, I came for everybody, not just for those who are, going to the temple. And then finally, the Samaritan woman also, when he talks about the Samaritan woman is when Jesus comes to a town in Samaria. Remember, Samaritans were despised by the Jewish people. And we have the parable of the Good Samaritan that we know all the story, right? That those that passed along, and the Samaritan was the only one that helped the injured individual. And Jesus uses that as an example of what's important is not what you believe, but more important than what you believe is how you act. And and he's next to a fountain, and there is this Samaritan woman, and Jesus goes to her and asks her to give him a drink. And the Samaritan woman tells him, "You are a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" Meaning, there are two things there. He cannot talk to a woman and he cannot talk to a Samaritan. So he's breaking in with two of the impositions of the religious. But Jesus just answers to her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water." So he's telling, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. So the teaching here is that he addresses the Samaritan woman, and he doesn't engage in worthless arguments. He doesn't discuss he should not talk to a woman, he should not talk to a Samaritan. But he brings her to the belief in the eternal truth. So when Xavier tells, causing her to abandon the old amphora of fantasy in order to search for the eternal truth, he's making a play here with what she was doing at the fountain. She went to the fountain to grab some water, and then Jesus gave her the eternal water. And then he continues going to the blind and lepers. He lived amongst those that need his help. He said many times he didn't come for those that were too proud and presumptions. He came for the suffering, for the sick, for those that needed help and enlightenment. And Eusebio finishes, how can you invoke his name to justify the madness of separation on the basis of faith? You know, it's the teachings of Jesus. Why we have to have 30,000 different religions to disseminate the teachings of Jesus? And even those that do not follow Jesus or do not come from religions that come from Jesus also have to understand that the teachings are what's important. Like Gandhi said, if every literature that exists in the world was thrown away and only the Sermon on the Mount remained, humanity will be saved. So the teachings of Jesus are what's really important. And again, what are we doing with this? This is what Eusebio is telling us here. Okay? Comments here? Questions? It's a lot of things for us to digest, I know. Oh, okay. On, Philip.
Holding everyone's attention, Eusebio continued intrepidly. You are not expected to give up the spiritual deposit of your age-old beliefs. In every area, wherever the sowing of Christ blooms, it is possible to honor the divine law, engraving its sublime concepts in the heart. What is asked of your believing spirit is that you utilize the heavenly blessings distributed to you in abundant currents of light. Therefore, do not limit your demonstration of trust in the Most High to the ceremonies of outward worship. Get rid of the indifference that chills your ornate cathedrals. Let us make ourselves each other's true brothers and sisters. Let us transform the church into sweet home of the Christian family. Whatever our interpretations might be, let us forget the erroneous statement that the apostolic times are in the past. In their own lives, all disciples of the gospel have a bastion destined for the living worship of the divine master, before which the multitudes of the needy pass by every day. Loving
and helping, believing and acting, Jesus supported the imbalanced
mind of the Greco-Roman world, infusing it with a new life for a happier humankind. Likewise, all disciples of the redemptive faith can and must cooperate to uplift their fragile and wavering brothers and sisters. Flee the Phariseeisms, of modern times, which refuses fraternal help in the name of the satanic spirit of dogmatic schism. Jesus was never a preacher of discord. He never endorsed the arrogant vanity of those who, with their lips, declared themselves to be clean while keeping their hearts clogged with the miasmatic grime of pride and deadly selfishness. Let us mobilize our trust in the All-Merciful to spread his blessed kingdom of redemption. To wait for heaven while scorning the earth is a work of foolishness. No one can bribe divine justice, although you often foster the idea of a ridiculous business with the divinity. If a farmer can never stay idle when there is an untilled field or a perilous marsh to tend to, how can you remain idle on the land of crime and darkness, unrest and suffering? The fallen brother or sister is our precious burden. Difficulty is our holy incentive, pain our purifying school. Let us embrace one another. Therefore, in the name of the Lamb of God, who has renewed our mind, uplifting it to the higher realms by means of glorious ascension through sacrifice. Only in this way, my friends, can we respond to the lofty destiny reserved for us. Faced with a world in jeopardy, crazed by
lower ambitions,
dominated by hate and misery, and involved in a series of unending and exterminating wars, let us harmonize ourselves in Jesus Christ in order to bring balance to the physical realm. Disquieting darkness stalks your steps and institutions as it makes its sinister rounds. Avoid the subversion of spiritual values. Drive away the darkness that threatens your political, religious organizations. Fear the science that parades without wisdom. Free yourselves from the reason that calculates without love. Revise your faith so that its impulses do not become muddled for lack of edification. The earth is presently a harsh, dolorous battlefield. Awaken your sleeping conscience and love the divine law, forgetting the age-old slavery of illusion. Salvation is a continual work of renewal and improvement. Let us proclaim our faith in Christ Jesus to the troubled world forever. Upon finishing his exhortation, Uzbekio was haloed with prodigious emanations of light. The reverent assembly displayed faces pale with bewilderment. A large group of co-workers from our realm raised their voices in harmony, singing a moving hymn of glorification to the Supreme Lord. The melodious notes extended into the distance among the trees on the wings of a soft breeze. When the service ended, I noticed that the incarnate spirits, supported by workers from our assistance activities, were not leaving.
cheerfully and optimistically outside the physical body, and thus perhaps
understanding the errors of their wayward belief with greater lucidity, many of them left weeping and downcast.
yes. So, you know, more advices for us to do the right work. Not much more to add here in terms of what he said, that he's asking everyone to follow the teachings of Jesus and to take the teachings of Jesus outside the churches. Let's worship the Master through our deeds and not through our words. It's very interesting. He says, no one can buy divine justice, although he often fosters the idea of a ridiculous business with the divinity. Isn't that what we've been doing? Trying to buy our places in heaven throughout the centuries? And, you know, we are dividing ourselves, like it says here. The Pharisaism of modern times refuses fraternal help in the name of dogmatic schism. You know, embrace one another. Only this way that we can progress. Don't stay idle, because that's not the way to move forward. Don't use words only, use acts. And you know, follow the teachings of Jesus. And it's interesting, when he finishes, everyone is leaving. You know, I don't know if they wake up thinking they had a nightmare, or if they, you know, they wake up thinking that what they saw. But I'm sure that whatever Eusebio told him is imprinted in their subconscious, and it will be brought forward when they are in the middle of religious discussions, in the middle of religious activities within their own churches. They will be more open to be receptive to the spiritual influences that surround us and try to assist us in our difficult moments or in our challenges within our own faith. So that's it. We're not going to move to the next chapter because it's already, we have only a little time left. But if you have any comments, questions here, we can continue a little bit. Luis, yes?
My internet's lousy today, so let's see if it can hold my image and my audio. You know, most of my thoughts and concepts regarding, you know, structured church-based religion, and I could agree more with Eusebio. I'm just curious about one thing, and I'd like to hear your thoughts regarding that. Despite his open, you know, the contents of his discourse, I found it interesting that Andre Luiz, you know, used the word service when he ended his, you know, explanation, and, you know, guys sang hymns. Those are things associated with church services. So I wonder, why did he use those terms? Do you have any thoughts about
what
it?
terms exactly? I don't know. I'm not sure I understood what you asked.
Go to the next page. One more. Yeah, there, stop. See, when the service ended, so he characterized Eusebio's class or speech or whatever as a service, something like a religious service. And then he notes it, melodious notes extending into the distance. Those are very church-related, you know, symbols. I'm curious about it. Why use that in the middle of a of a speech that's so, against temples and the structured churches that are politically connected and with different aims than the,
I'm looking at the original in Portuguese here. I don't think I think services the original in Portuguese it's not really services. It is, but it is the translation service in English is much more of a religious thing than in Portuguese when he says terminados os serviços da reunião.
Yeah.
So
Got it.
I think the translation it gives a different impression. And on the other part, yes, he talks about even in Portuguese, cântico de glorificação ao Supremo Senhor. It is, but I think that, in my opinion, we go back to what Kardec used at his time, right? Kardec had to use the language and the expressions that were acceptable at the time, because you cannot break with everything without, when you bring new ideas, you bring new words, but you have to respect a little bit what is ingrained in the actual beliefs. And again, this is my opinion, but I think that's why Andre Luiz still keeps the terms that he brings from his own religious background, right? Because even if he didn't believe in and follow religion, and when he was incarnated, he was Catholic, of course, like 90% of the Brazilians at that time, or even more. So all these expressions comes from the Catholic background that we are used to. So that's my belief why he still uses it in the expressions there. I don't know.
That's a good point. Those are good points. And actually, I believe you are correct. In the translation, I think the word service is much stronger in English than the original in Portuguese.
Yeah. Elmo, anything there?
Yeah, I think that I totally agree with the translation problem. What is the other expression again?
Singing a moving hymn of glorification to the Supreme Lord, which is a very religious way of express.
Yeah, so my question for all of us to reflect is, why not? What is the problem with singing a moving hymn of glorification to the Supreme Lord? Is it our own private biases? What is the problem with that?
The problem, in my opinion, Elmo, is that is the typical thing that you see in many churches, where the spirit is lost. It's one more move towards obtaining funds and power over your flock. So it seems to go against the objective of Eusebius' speech or whatever, or class, that is, instead, apply the teachings of Jesus, be love first. We are all brothers, instead of following the book of your church, if I might say so. The book's not a good word, whatever.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, but I don't see a problem in borrowing or taking everything that is nice from any institution. And I think the specific statement, singing a moving hymn of glorification to the Lord, is a very nice way of saying, we take your teachings and we seek to live by these teachings, regardless of where it comes from. Let's say that it comes from Einstein. If Einstein had said that, nobody would have a problem, because Einstein was a scientist, not a religious person. Nice is nice, regardless from whose mouth it comes from. But we carry our biases, and I agree with you. Those things have given a little shivering when I And then I have to really, oh my God, I have to accept that this is nice. It is just nice, regardless.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyone else? We have the Q&A today. So we'll stop here. We do our final prayer, and then we do a 5-minute break, and we go for the Q&A, okay? But before we go to the Q&A, I want to invite all those that are here that were not here on Thursday, that we finished the Spirit's book on this last Thursday. We finished question 19. So before we start again with the Spirit's book, I'm going to give a lecture that I already gave, which is the pedagogical structure of the Spirit's book. So this Thursday, instead of our regular studies, we are going to have the presentation, the talk that I'm going to give on the Spirit's book. And it will, because it's a longer talk, it doesn't, and we want to leave time for discussions. We're not going to have two different classes, the Spirit's book and the Medium's book. We're going to have a lecture and a Q&A discussion after the lecture.
We're not having
okay?
So we're not having the Medium's book.
We are not having the Medium's book, yes. We are having the lecture, which is, it's a nice introduction of the Spirit's book for those of you that remember what I presented last time before which was in July, August of 2017. I found the date. Yes, so 3.5 years later, we're back to it. So that's what I'm going to present this Thursday, and you know, I invite you all to participate on it. I think it's going to be very interesting. For those that are interested in mediumship, I'm giving a lecture this coming Saturday, to the Spiritist Society of Baltimore at 5 p.m. our time, New York time, on mediumship education. It's the one that you've seen him giving here already. So it's nothing new, but just if you want to.
Will you mention it on the email?
It won't be in the email. I'll send you info, because it's not part of SGNY. It's another group. So
yeah, if you could kindly send us a reference so we can find it, because looking for a presentation in YouTube, it's tough.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, no, I'll send the link to all of you that one. And this coming Sunday will be the second Sunday of the month, so we'll be studying the Gospel according to Spiritism. Okay, and thank you all for coming. Vote. And Zoraida, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, absolutely. To our spiritual benefactors, all that have contributed here to this beautiful, beautiful lesson that we received today. This Christian plea to all of us, opening our hearts and minds to what is good, to understand teachings of Christ, to work as much as we can in our lives, following his footsteps, helping all those around us, our families and friends, and those that don't care much for us. We pray, dear Father, and take all that has been given to us here today, related in our lives, to understand the need of prayers because of all that has taken hold of this planet Earth. But never to give up. We have the faith that will help us and understand the need of what we're going through. To remember, our Christ is with us always, our spiritual benefactors. And so, dear Father, allow us to continue throughout the week to help our brothers and sisters in need, in hospitals and hospices, throughout this land, for those that have gone through their transition to the spirit world, and all that stay behind. May you surround them with peace and strength and courage. And to remember, without charity, there is no love. We must continue to do what we have been told through our spiritual benefactors, and most important, through our Christ. We thank you, dear Lord. And we ask, as we come to the end of our meeting, to continue with prayers throughout the week and return again next week. And with that in mind, we ask permission to close our meeting.